Hi, Humboldt Harvey here, and this is my take on Step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. As I give my 2 cents on this step, I'd like to remind you once again, suggest, let's say, to get an AA sponsor. Because the thinking that wrecked you bad enough to come to our little fiestas is probably lurking around up in your noggin, just waiting for a chance to express its universal wisdom one more time. You know, those beautiful ideas that led you straight into the active war zone of your own mind. A minefield, you might call it. In fact, I think I can hear that artillery barrage sounding off, even as I speak. So let's take a look and see if there's something we can add to the book's explanation of the second step. There's the old adage of, I came to believe. That's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I need to add a lot to that. When I look at this step, it has 2 parts I've found that sometimes are a little bit confusing to newcomers. In the My Take on the first step commentary, we covered the idea of being powerless over your emotional and mental states because you respond to the world incorrectly. We perceive our place in the world from a warped sense of self, and this in turn leads to the bottle to cope. The cycle of mismanaged emotions coloring our perceptions, and then the bad actions that come from it, and feeds a vicious cycle of dysfunction, really. We start down the wrong path and end up building our character out of the most defensive bad ideas, ending in ruined relationships, jobs, and a pretty sucky life overall. Some might argue, wait a minute, Harvey, my life is pretty good other than drinking. It isn't necessarily the situation you're in. You might have a big old field of friends and loved ones and all the material success anyone could ever want. So you offer this up as proof that you are not suffering from any real insanity other than your drinking. But the sad truth is, if you really felt on the inside as good as you claim your outsides reveal, then you certainly wouldn't drink to escape or change your mental landscape. That's for sure. That's a simple, obvious truth, my friend. And if you're listening in at this point, you probably have suspected that there were a few too many light bulbs covering that shriveled up trunk of your yesteryear's Christmas tree. So we think we got the explanation of the higher power from the books. What we tend to miss is the explanation of sanity, or more accurately, insanity. It's simple enough to understand. Sane means healthy or healthy thinking. Now, we AAs with a lot of time will mostly agree that no one has healthy thinking all of the time. And if we could achieve that, this would be the end of the 12 steps in our fellowship. We would just go in a room with the steps and a couple of hours later walk out completely cured. No, that's not going to happen. Healthy thinking is something we strive towards, but it is important to take a look at what it really means, and if it is truly an unachievable goal. Sanity doesn't mean every thought you have is good, healthy, and clean. What it means is we'll be able to make healthy choices and take healthy actions. Not that we float around and have saintly thoughts all day, although I do get to hear the angels singing all day with my tinnitus. But, truth be told, we aren't saints by any twisted standard or wishful thinking. And this is true despite the number of AAs that own yoga pants and incense. AA is a place where the insane and dangerous, at least to themselves, come to practice and learn a way of life that leads to mental freedom and good choices. Life is still going to throw curveballs every day. Sometimes underwear changing ones, sometimes little Nerf balls. It's how we process them and the other interactions in our day that we define sanity or insanity. We're always going to be human and susceptible to anger-based fear, or fear of shame at our core. And we have hardened our character and thinking based on experiences from this exaggerated perspective. It is our choice of actions that define our sanity overall, not our random or first reactions, which when followed have traditionally led us down a twisted path. The further exploration of the book's ideas on coming to believe are not that hard to grasp. A power greater than ourselves is what it said, and it continues on to cover many ideas from a mostly Christian viewpoint about a higher power, but does concede that the group itself as a whole, or just the concept of love and goodness, can serve as a higher power or God, as the case may be. The only thing that's required is for you to stop thinking that your personal power, as we have already covered in the first step, that isn't working too well is going to fix your dilemma, and that there is a power or powers that can help you begin a life of making healthy choices. Another way of saying step 2 is, I accept that there is help for me personally, outside myself, that will restore me to a balanced life of healthy life choices, freeing me from the chains of obsession, unbalanced emotion, fearful reactions, and negative thinking. Aha, you say, got it. Well, I've found that there is a hitch in many a newcomer's thinking that doesn't get covered too well and should be pointed out. Notice I said me personally when describing another way of saying step 2. I think a lot of alcoholics think there's a higher power capable of restoring them to sane thinking. Restore, by the way, meaning help you make consistently healthy choices that lead to freedom of thought and to happiness. It's not like every choice you ever made was unhealthy. If that were really the case, you'd never have made it past the age of 5 as you walked over to pet an angry bear. So let's be realistic and not exaggerate the negative aspects of our mental condition. Drama and exaggeration being one of the alcoholic signs of less than stellar mental health. So it boils down to accepting that you as a human being, though lost, must acknowledge that you personally are worthy of a higher power's help. You're not so evil and special that you're beyond help, and if this help, in its myriad different forms, has helped others with stories just like yours, that it can help you too. It's only negative thinking about being less than that makes you believe you are unnoticed, unworthy, or incapable of receiving this help. And it's this stumbling block why many an alcoholic have failed to grasp step 2's deeper meaning as they continued to secretly belittle themselves until they drank again. The other pernicious idea is that you are incapable of getting sane. If you are listening to this and are not obsessed with every waking thought being evil, then your mind is capable of healing and growing the positive and pushing the negative out, with the help of our higher powers. You wouldn't be listening to me right now if your mind didn't have that capability of change. You are worthy of love and kindness and can adopt those traits yourself with a little help from a sponsor. That sponsor I told you to get? I strongly suggested for you. Heck, just get a sponsor. In the past, you have experienced all the positive traits that the mind is capable of. And even in this moment, if you're feeling overwhelmed, all you need to do is reflect for a second on all the times you have felt love and compassion and been okay. You see, you are capable of having and growing these beneficial attributes and having them become your mind's go-to, instead of the negative ones that have trapped you in the past. And this higher power we can see proof of in the group and its positive expressions of mental health. Don't get lost in focusing on the people who are still struggling for the air of sanity and peace in their shares. They need to vent to find the path. We alkies and regular humans love to add up the negatives and ignore the positives. When I was young, I was a cabbie in San Francisco, and I noticed that I usually took about 42 loads of passengers every night. Sure enough, it finally dawned on me one tired night after a 10-hour shift that the only people I would remember were the 1 or 2 who didn't tip me, forgetting about the other 40 who tipped me or over-tipped me. Human nature is to look for threats and operate from fear and stress. With us, it just becomes a way of existing. Now, if you really listen in those meetings, then you will realize that for every struggling share, there are many more positive ones. Plainly spoken, you are just as worthy and capable as anyone. As a famous spiritual teacher once said, you most of all are deserving of your love and kindness more than anyone on this earth. So give yourself permission to let a higher power of your and our fluctuating and mostly misunderstanding help you, and you will have come to believe that you too can become sane once more, that you are worthy, that there exists a force or collective repository of understanding that will give you peace, if you let it. Try it. What do you got to lose but that miserable old way of life that led you to our doors? May peace, love, and light be your heart's delight. Until next time, this is Humboldt Harvey, wishing you happy trails.